Good morning and welcome to the next webinar on steel wire ropes. It's the fourth in our series from the last period. Today we're going to talk about lubrication and the sustainability aspects of lubrication. My name is Michel de Vos. I'm marketing manager for the Vebinārs group, and here in the same room is Ellen, who will do a talk about lubrication of steel wire ropes. And from Stockholm, we have Elin Letteblad, if I'm spelling that correct, and she will talk a little bit about the sustainability aspects of lubrications. This webinar will take around 30-40 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat. And after both presentations, we'll have a short Q&A session with both speakers. And you're all on mute. So please use the chat button. First of all, a short introduction about our group. We're a part of Axel Johnson International, a big Swedish private company which has 6 very strong business lines, and we're part of the Lifting Solutions group, as you can see on the left side. And next slide. Yeah. What we do, we're a global player and specialized in lifting equipment, fall arrest, overhead cranes, etc., and of course services. And we operate as a group. As you can see, we have a lot of local companies, 22 in 20 countries, and as you can see, we have around 1,500 employees, and we're operating in all kinds of industries, from energy, manufacturing, or construction sectors. It's everywhere. If you see our footprint worldwide, then you see that we're mainly operating in Europe and the eastern part of Europe and Russia, but also in the USA, and since shortly as well, we have 5 companies acquired in Australia. And these are all local brands, and I think one of them you recognize from your local company. And as you can see, we serve local and global customers worldwide. All right, this was the short introduction. A couple of subjects, what we're going to do, the first 3 bullet points: why lubricate, lubrication methods, lubricants, frequency will be done by Ellen. And the last one, the sustainability aspects, by Elin. I wish you a very pleasant webinar, and I hand over now to Ellen.
And a very warm welcome to the lubrication webinar. I present myself. I'm Alain Belmont. I'm from Belgium. I'm since '86 at the Vebinārs Belgium, responsible for steel wire ropes, and we do advice, investigations, we make service reports, we climb into cranes, we have our own laboratory to do investigations and so on. So I think for the last 30 years we've done a lot of research. And one of the researches we did was lubrication, to see what happens with steel wire ropes and lubrication. Okay, why should you, or why should we, or why should anybody who's using steel wire ropes, why should they lubricate? Well, because you have some internal factors. First of all, we need to say that a steel wire rope is a complex mechanical machine, let's say. We have different wires and strands, and they are around the core in a helix form. Yeah. So every time you load the wire rope, or it passes through sheaves and drums, or even on drums with multi-layers, yeah, you have this banding from the rope. So you have friction between all these different components, between the wires, between the strands, so you have steel to steel contact. That means your rope or your wires will wear out. So you need a little bit of lubrication between it. Yeah? So then you have external factors, because you have the environmental factors like rain, salt water, temperatures, dust. Anyhow, yeah, this will create, let's say, wear also. And you have the rope which comes into contact with sheaves, with grooves, with drums. So also for that reason, you need some protection and some lubrication. So the protection of the wires and strands will give you an extent for the service life. Yeah. How much and how long it will last longer, we see that later on. So why do you really need to re-lubricate? Because many people say, yeah, but there is original already lubrication in my wire rope. Yeah, normally all ropes are lubricated in production. So you have between the wires in the strands, you should have, from production reasons, you already have a kind of lubrication between the wires. And sometimes you also have between the strands some lubrication. Why is this? Well, this is necessary for production, because if you just want to make strands and ropes without lubrication, you're going to end up with some wires or some strands already fatigued. So you need to have some fluid production. So you need to add some lubrication in the production process. Yeah? So second reason is the conservation in stock. Sometimes when the rope is ready, it's going to stay for months or for years in the stock at the manufacturer. Sometimes it's going to stay for years in our stock at the different Manus stock or sister companies in France or in Spain. And yeah, it will be the first loop, let's say, in service when you're gonna put the rope into service on your crane. Yeah, then it's gonna be the first lubrication, and be aware this will be temporary because ropes will loosen up the original lubrication due to bending, squeezing. So the original lubrication will come out of the rope. It will service for lubrication, doing some lubrication between the strands, between the wires, and it will end up in your sheaves or on your drum. So re-lubrication is advisable to prevent corrosion and to lubricate strands. And it is also necessary for your grooves of the sheaves and drums. So be aware that you don't only re-grease or re-lubricate the rope, but also your sheaves and drums. And at the end, it gives you, of course, an extent of the lifetime. Yeah. So why should you lubricate? Well, here I would give you a little example from a laboratory test. You can see there, if you're gonna use an unlubricated rope, so a rope which is completely dry from the beginning, so no lubrication added in production, but you can see there, let's say it's about 50 weeks or something, yeah. Well, if you compare it with a lubricated rope, you end up with, let's say 100 weeks. It's almost the double lifetime. Yeah? And if you're gonna use a lubricated rope from the beginning and you're gonna re-lubricate it, yeah, you're gonna end up with an extra 50 weeks. So it's very interesting to see the service life growing up, at least in practice, because the things I'll be talking there is in a laboratory, yeah. But in real, you're gonna add at least 20 to 30% of your service life. For some applications like elevators, it's gonna end up 50%. In other applications, due to certain circumstances, it's gonna double up or more. But what is very important is you're also gonna have extremely profits, because you're going to have less wear on your sheaves and the drums. And normally sheaves and drums are more expensive to change than your ropes. So it also prevents rusting during transport and putting your ropes in stock for months or for years. It increases the safety of the rope when you use it, because otherwise it's steel on steel and you never know what's going to happen. And it reduces on twist. Rope can twist due to fleet angles on your sheaves. And so if you re-lubricate normally or regularly, then things will go smoother in your sheaves and on your drums, and there will be no wear or less wear on your grooves. Okay, what kind of requirements you normally want if you're putting some lubricant on steel wire ropes? Well, let's see that here. On this list, it must have a very good anti-wear effect. So to prevent steel on steel contact, yeah. It has to reduce the internal friction from the different parts of the rope, your core, your strands, your outer strands, and in the strands, your, let's say, wires in the strand. It must penetrate into the strands and also into the core, so re-lubricate the whole steel wire rope again. It has to be stable over a wide, large temperature range. So sometimes there's a heat involved in these ropes, let's say 50 degrees or 100 degrees. So it has to be heat resistant. Sometimes it could sustain cold so that the lubricant doesn't get brittle. Yeah, so that it stays fluid or that it can lubricate the different parts of your rope. We need to have no sticky situation so that sand or dirt will stick to the cable. And yes, sand and dirt could be a disaster when it fits between the strands. So sometimes it's better if you use a very sticky lubrication. Don't lubricate it with a sticky situation, because sand will stick to it and then your rope will be damaged by the sand between the strands. So no sticky thing to put on your rope. There are certain lubricants which will expel sand and dirt out of the rope, yeah, or it will displaces water if the rope is in water situations, yeah, or from rain or something, yeah. Some lubricants will get into the rope and they will get the water out, so there will be less rusty situations coming from the rope. I hope that your lubricant will be transparent so that it will easier or make it possible to do inspection of your rope. So if you use grease, you're not going to see the rope strands or the wires anymore, and then okay. How are you going to inspect your rope for discard? So make it transparent. It must be water resistant and not washed off, so not washed easily. It must prevent rust, because if you have a galvanized rope, in the end you're going to have some wear on the outside wire. And if the galvanized layer is gone due to wear, yeah, then you could have a rusty situation or a rope looking a little bit rusty. If you use lubricant on that, that will prevent rusting further on. And then it must be easy applicable, so not taking hours or days to lubricate a rope. We're gonna focus on that later on. And if possible, environmentally friendly or biodegradable if possible, so that it doesn't hurt, let's say, the nature or so the environment. For some steel wire ropes who really have an application in water, in fresh water or salty, where you have the specific requirements for offshore installations, There are some lubricants which will seal off the cable to prevent water getting in. If you need to have wire ropes running in the water or underwater or in salty sea water, yeah. It will protect against corrosion. It has some polar properties in relation to galvanized steel, so that the lubricant won't drop off, let's say. In water situation where you have extreme loads that it do not wash off in the seawater, let's say, it must be completely water resistant, so that if you have lubricated, that water will be thrown away from your rope, yeah. And of course, again, the environmentally friendly lubricants coming up for the last 10 or 15 years, very important. We talk about this later in sustainability. Yeah? How many times should you lubricate? Well, for me, it's easy when the rope is dry. So steel wire ropes need a regular lubricated maintenance. Yeah. You have this deformation in the cable, in sheaves, you have forces, and you can be certain that your original grease will disappear. It will get out of the rope. So you need to replace it by another, let's say, grease or oil. Yeah. So, and don't ask me how many times, because, yeah, I say when it is dry, but it is, of course, depending on your type of application, your conditions inside, indoor, outside. Underwater, in dusty environments with sand or seawater. It also depends on the type of cable. If you have 6-strand or 8-strand or compacted strands, or these kind of wire ropes with plastic infill, yeah. So they don't need a lot of relubrication. That is an advantage. It also depends on the loads. If the rope is really loaded every time to, let's say, 100% of the saving working load, then lubrication will go out faster. So then you need to lubricate more often. Depending also on the temperature, because sometimes, yeah, I don't say that the lubrication will evaporate, but okay, if you have the temperature situation, you need perhaps to do some more lubrication. And of course, also on the number of bands, if you have a lot of sheaves in your application, depending on the diameter of your sheaves or drums, yeah, perhaps you're going to need more relubrication. Yeah. You can look the regulations up in the norm, which is there mentioned. In summary, you have there an indication about lubricating at regular intervals. Do you need it to do it, let's say, every month or every 6 months and so on, depending on how often you use the wire rope. If the wire rope was out of service, I don't know, for some months or sometimes for some years due to standstill, okay, then you normally need, before using the installation again, to lubricate a little bit. Yeah. And yeah, it's always, especially in these areas where you have these bending loads, you need to look where to lubricate first. You lubricate the rope, which goes through sheaves onto drums. So perhaps if you don't have time, or you don't are able to lubricate the whole rope, the whole length, let's say, just look at the areas where you have the most bendings, okay? How can you lubricate? Well, let's say there are some different things to do. You can spray it on, let's say an aerosol or a portable sprayer. You can see there the picture on the right. This is, let's say, what we normally advise. It's a Coca-Cola type of oil. Let's say you spray it on, and then it will enter the strands. It will enter till the core. You leave it on for about 30 minutes, and you touch the wire, and you're going to feel it's not sticky. Yeah, the oil has entered into the strands, and it gives you a water resistant or a water expelling situation on the outside. And you can see that the wires, the different wires, are visible for inspection. So there is no dirt, or you can look at the rope. It will be oiled. I could say greased, but it's no grease. It's no sticky rope. Yeah? You can do some dripping or swabbing. Preferably, you can do it where the rope is bent on the sheaves, or you can spray it on the drum. So all of the rope, just put it on the drum or on different layers on the drum, and you spray or you drip or you swab it or you brush it all over your drum. Yeah. For some applications, you can also use a high pressure lubricator system. These are this kind of machinery, let's say, where rope is completely, wait a minute. Yeah, where the rope is completely greased or re-greased under pressure. You have these different kind of possibilities, different brands, but anyhow, you can see on the bottom there, it gives you a really thoroughly lubrication, and the rope will look like this then in the end when it comes out of these shells. Yeah. The amount of lubricant needed, it depends on the application, of course, but this is a formula I normally advise. You should take the rope weight per meter, you multiply it by the length, so the kilos, let's say, on rope you have, take 1% of it, yeah, and put that as liters or as kilograms on your rope. So 1% of the wire rope weight. Yeah? If you have ropes with plastic infill, take half of it. So a half percentage will do the job. That's about my advice. You could also listen to the guys who are selling the lubricant, and they will double or triple it because they want to sell liters or kilograms. So it's better to stay at 1% or 0.5%. That'll do the job. It's not an advantage to put too much of your lubricant on this rope. Yeah. Okay, I will show you some examples now for rusty situations. Yeah, you can see there that there is some rust coming. Okay, this is for offshore situations there, or let's say dragage ships. Yeah. Some more examples. Sometimes you have automatic sprayers on your rope in your application. Yeah. You could have also some dirt or situations where the rope is completely dry. Yeah. As you can see there in the middle, this rope would need to have some grease or some oil. Yeah. At the right, you see that there are dirt between the strands. Yeah, that could attract dust or sand. So clean up this situation and oil or grease or lubricate that rope again. Yeah. Some more examples. Ropes which stay on locks like this. You see the rope is very dry, and it could also be, there's a little rusty situation beginning there. You see the guys are relubricating the rope there. Okay, it's a nice job to do, but you need to do it. If you open up a rope there on the left, if you open up the rope, you can see at the outside, you can see the original lubricant which comes into the rope from the factory. But if you open up a rope, new rope, you could see on the inside if there is still the original lubrication. The other pictures are rope, let's say, on some applications I saw where I really advised the clients to do lubrication. On the left, you have this situation where you have socketed the rope. Yeah. If you're socketing a rope, yeah, then you need to completely get the lubricant out of the different wires. Otherwise, you don't have a good socketing process. Yeah? So it's very important to re-lubricate from the beginning underneath the socket, because there the strands are going to be degreased due to the socketing process. So if you don't do that, you see that rust will appear just under the socket. Yeah? On the right, you see rusty situations coming from a little damage to the outer wires in galvanized. Yeah? So lubricate, lubricate. And then I end up with, don't lubricate heavily corroded ropes. So if your rope is completely rusted, then you have the situation that into the strands and into the different wires from your strands, these wires are so corroded that they are connected to one another. Yeah? So the rope will hold due to that there is, let's say, increase of friction between these different wires. Yeah. And if you're going to add then lubrication, this whole situation will loosen up. So there are big accidents coming if your cable will break automatically if you're going to re-lubricate a completely corroded rope. Yeah? If you see corroded cables, you're going to end up with only 1/5 of your lifetime. So it's too late then. So the strands must slide past each other to ensure even load distribution. So sometimes you're going to see that rusted, completely corroded ropes only are pulling on 2, 3, or 4 strands. So there will be an uneven load distribution in your rope. So heavily corroded ropes, be careful. You're going to loosen up all the different parts. So don't re-lubricate very corroded ropes, but change them. Well, that's it. I'm interested in your questions we're going to tackle in 10 minutes. And now we go to Ellen. Eileen, sorry, I'm Ellen, but this is my twin sister.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Elaine.
She's going to say something. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Elin Letterblad, as I pronounce it in Swedish at least, and I am the Sustainability Manager for the Lifting Solutions, and I've been working for Axel Johnson International since 2013. And I'm here to talk about the sustainability aspects of lubrication and how we can reduce the environmental footprint by the use of lubrications. And my dear colleague here has already mentioned those 2 very important aspects, because in the world of steel wire ropes, lubrication is contributing positively in especially 2 aspects of sustainability. And first of all, lubrication is prolonging or extending the lifetimes of the rope, which is of course a great advantage in the sustainability area. Because in the sustainable world, we want to develop circular business model or circular material streams. And by extending the lifetime of the products, we are really contributing to that. The opposite to circular business model or circular material stream is the linear, where we produce, we use, and then just dispose it. But here in the circular one, we are focusing on keeping the raw material and the products that we have produced as long as possible. So that is a really good advantage by lubrication and taking care of your steel wire ropes. And by extending the lifetimes means also that we don't need to produce as many new steel wire ropes, which of course saving the amount of raw material need and also saving energy consumption. Secondly, there are safety aspects also in this. By maintaining your products with lubrication, you postpone the fatigue and you will not have more and more wire breaks. So there are, in other words, also minimizing risks in the aspects of usage of lubrications. But lubrication is, of course, something that we need to handle with care. It's a chemical that we are talking about. And a lot of lubrication is every year leaked out to the environment, and this needs to be minimized. So as you have heard on this webinar today, you need to have knowledge about how to apply the lubrication. You need to know the correct amount to use, not too less. We need to keep the good performance of the rope and also extending the lifetime, but we don't need to overconsume it. And you need to have knowledge about the frequency, how often you should use it, and in the end also how to dispose it in a proper and safe manner. And if you're not sure about those things, I really recommend you to contact a professional. And then we can move over to the next slide, please. Because although there are challenges with lubrications, there are actually better environmental choices of lubrications on the market. Priority number one is, of course, that the lubrication should be fit for its purpose. But thanks to, among others, the increasing oil prices, the increased environmental considerations to avoid negative effects of the spillage of lubrication, that has really led to the development of new and less environmentally harmful lubrications. So today there are a set of lubrications that is considered environmentally accepted lubrications called EALs. And those need to be fulfilling a set of requirements, which means that they are more biodegradable, they have a certain level of renewable content, they are less toxic and non-bioaccumulative. Some vendors of lubrications have either internal self-certifications to ensure the fulfillment of EAL, but there are also labeling programs and third-party certifications. And some examples are stated here: Blue Angel, European Eco Label, the Nordic Swan, the Swedish standards, and so on. So that's something that could be worth looking for when choosing lubrication as well. So this was actually just a very short introduction of the environmental and sustainability aspects of lubrication. And to summarize, the positive effects are really winning over the negatives. And this is mainly thanks to the capacity of prolonging or extending the lifetime of the steel wire ropes. And with a good management, lubrication management and usage of the EALs, or the environmentally accepted lubrications, you can really reducing the environmental footprint even further. And if you want to have more information about how to extend the lifetime of your steel wire ropes, I would really recommend you to watch our last webinar that was about MRT, or magnetic rope testing. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much, Elin and Ellen. Gonna do a final wrap up, of course. We do some questions and answers. First of all, there are 2 coming up webinars. Still need to be planned, but we will communicate this after this webinar. Rigging arrangements, sheaves, drums, and blocks. And the other one is end terminations. Again, we'll let you know in the mail after this session. And then we have the final part of the webinar is that we have some questions. They're already published as well in the live Q&A. I'm sorry, Ellen, no questions for you yet. Hopefully they will come, but it's also a new topic as well on lubrication. I have some questions for you, Ellen. I need to cherry pick a couple of them before we go to finalize it. Let's see. What is your recommended method for lubrication to achieve penetration to the core of the wire?
Well, it depends on what you're going to use. You have different kind of lubricants. You have different kind of brands, if it will penetrate till the core and so on. It depends on the diameter of the rope, of course, the type of the rope, yeah. If you have plastic infill rope, that doesn't matter, because normally your original lubrication will stay in the middle of your rope. So the lubrication which you put on will not pass through the plastic layer. So you only have to relubricate your, let's say, 8 or more outer strands, just the lubrication of the wires there. So that will be enough. And then, yeah, it all depends on your application, to be honest. Yeah, that's my answer to that. If people really need to know more about the typical lubrication they need on their application, you just phone in, or you just ask your local steel wire rope company, and they will tell you what kind of thing you normally could use to relubricate your rope.
Okay. After this session, all the Q&As will be sent as well, so you can read in your own time if you need anything. Another question, it's a fishing question. For fishing industry, due to the nature of their pattern of life, it is hard to re-lubricate. Is there any other extra solution for this industry?
Well, I would advise to put all the rope on your drum, yeah, and just, if possible, just relubricate all the lengths of rope which are on your drum, because there you have ropes running on your drum in normally different layers, yeah. Their wear will be extreme, yeah, and the things coming from the drum will travel through sheaves. So there you're also gonna have an advantage of relubricating. How many times or with what kind of lubricant? Okay, that's a discussion we can't answer today or here, huh? But wait and see and ask your local provider of steel wire ropes. And sometimes for fishing ropes, there are different kind of type of ropes, yeah, compacted 6-strand. It all depends on price, I think, in the fishing industry. So it all depends on type of rope, prices of rope, and prices or possibilities for relubrication on fishing boats. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Another question is there an EN norm?
Well, there is one which I mentioned there, the DIN norm. Mm-hmm. That's the only one I looked up. There is prescription there. It's of course for Germany. I don't know if there is a really norm for ISO or in Europe. So, but yeah, it all really depends on doing the exercise, speaking to people who are responsible for discard of some ropes, and it all depends on the applications. Yeah, it's let's say yeah, due to experience, and there is no norm which could for every application making a relubrication formula for your application. So wait and see what is coming, but it all is just advisable for your local, let's say, Certex or Manons or sister companies. Yeah.
All right. Elaine, one more for you. Sorry,
Yeah,
Elaine,
okay.
Still no question about sustainability, but perhaps afterwards. Is it needed to clean a rope before applying new lubricant?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you have this situation where people selling grease or lubricant that you should clean your rope first. It all depends what is there to clean. If it is sand or dirt, okay, then you should clean your rope first and then adding the lubricant. You have sometimes this machinery, let's say brushes and things like that, to clean up your rope. So if it is necessary, yeah, because if you're going to put on your lubricant and it will not penetrate into the strands or between the strands or just into the core because there is dirt or sand, okay, then lubricating will not be efficient. And yeah, there are some system brushes. There is also a system, let's say, if you use the shelves to put your lubricant under pressure into the rope. Yeah, there are some devices which you can put before the shelves so that you can clean up your rope just before you put the lubricant under pressure in your new rope. Okay.
Okay, this is a very long question, and it has a environmental impacts part. So maybe Elin, you could answer it, or together with Ellen. Let me see. It's a very long question from Matthias of Sweden. The use of steel wire ropes in lifeboat, davits, cranes on ships is a special application. These ropes are used only maximum one cycle, one time a month. But most importantly, they must be replaced every 5 years by law. So these ropes will not wear down from use, but they will look rusty after a while if you do not lubricate them. But I would say it is only a cosmetic issue. Question is, if there is any point lubricating these type of ropes if you take into account the environmental impact and the costs involved. What are your thoughts about this? Tough question, but
yeah, it's a special application. So for these lifeboat rafts, typically ropes for that, yeah, they have to be replaced every 5 years. So I would advise to have a kind of lubrication on this rope, which seals off the rope from water. Yeah. So there are some brands which could be used, and it's a kind of lubricant which is a greasy lubricant, easy to put on, yeah, but it's not grease as really grease, but it will penetrate. It will do its job for lubrication, but it will seal off every water getting into the rope. So that will be a safe situation, and that would be my advice. Depending on in which country you are, you could ask the lubricant which will seal off this kind of rope, but will still have a visual inspection on this rope, because this is very important. You're only going to need perhaps once this rope. Probably not, but yeah, then if you're going to use it once, if you need it once to loosen up the lifeboat, let's say, that it will be working and there won't be a rusty situation. And that can be prevented by lubricating it in the 5 years you leave it on the application. I hope this will be a satisfying answer, because it's really the application. It's very special. It's very special.
Elin is putting thumbs up, so that's no. You want to add something, Elin? No, that's fine. Okay. Due to time, let's do a final question for you again, Elin. It's referring to the question before, I think. What about cleaning of wire working in salt water?
Yeah, in salt water, we know that's let's say a difficult situation, but there lubricating and if possible environmentally correct lubricating is important. You're going to do it more often in salty situations. Problem is that be careful that the core is still intact, because you can see on the outside, you can see the rusty situation, but you're never going to see the inside. And so if you using, let's say, not penetrating lubricant, yeah, then okay, your wire will look, let's say, reasonably okay on the outside, but you're never going to know what's going on the inside. What I advise then in this kind of situation is not to use 6x36 with steel wire in a core, yeah, but with applications with compacted wires and with plastic infill, because the plastic infill will prevent that things are getting into the core. Yeah. So we in Belgium, we have a lot of experience for dredging companies, which have no more problems with rusty situations on wire ropes. So there you can really lubricate, let's say, but you never have to worry about extreme rusty things or wear on the inside of your rope. Yeah.
All right. So this ends this webinar. Thank you for participating by all the companies as well. Thank you, Elin from Stockholm. Thank you, Helen, again. See you next time. And after this session, you will receive an email with the Q&A, with the recording, with all materials. And if you have a question, just contact your local company and they will help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching.
Have a nice day.
Till the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.